A few decades ago, if you loved a product or you loved a service, you told a few people. Maybe you told 10 or 100. And if you're particularly popular, maybe you reached 1,000 people. Now in the internet era, those numbers seem quaint. With social network, we could reach tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions or billions. The internet allows this kind of tipping point where great brands experience this exponential growth in the demand for their products and services. This tipping point can apply to all across different industries. And we see that in things like Angry Birds and Tom's Shoes, and locally with a popular dentist. The tipping point, although it applies to each of these different industries, the result is a little bit different. Angry Birds is, of course, a software product. And when the software product and 100,000 people want to download the new software product, a computer server is spun up. Within a few seconds, or maybe even minutes, 100,000 people can download the new Angry Birds game. Tom's Shoes is, of course, a consumer product. It's a little bit different than software, a little bit harder to scale, but it scales nevertheless. When 100,000 people want to buy the new Tom's Shoes, maybe there's an extra shift that's applied to the factory, or maybe even a factory is spun up. And so maybe it takes days or weeks, possibly even months. But that exponential growth in the demand is met because consumer products scale. What happens when 100,000 people email Dr. Terry asking for an appointment? Now we understand that Angry Birds as a software product, it scales. Tom's Shoes as a consumer product scales, but Dr. Terry does not. Dr. Terry belongs to what we call a professional service. Professional services include things like doctors and nurses and therapists and engineers and architects and designers, lawyers and accountants, and generally the concept of a consultant. The professional services, they can actually scale to some extent, but it takes a long time. It takes years and potentially decades, and they certainly cannot meet the demand that's created by a tipping point. When they try to build a particular company, and now you see things like 1,000-member law firms, something happens, and there's a fracture. And you see this in the absolute dismal retention rates of big law firms. What's happening here is a misalignment. This misalignment when you're trying to scale hundreds and thousands of people, and you're trying to scale thousands and 10,000s of clients. And this misalignment occurs because and I will come back to this over and over, this concept of a calling. In software products, you can make exact copies. In consumer products, you can make nearly identical copies. But professional services rely on humans, and we're not all the same. We have a different why, and what I will call a calling. In professional services, typically these people are going through an enormous number of years of education, and then an enormous number of years as an apprentice. And so they're making an investment to follow their calling. But sometimes this calling goes astray by greed or by fear. So if professional services cannot scale to meet the tipping point of an exponential growth in the demand of their company, what can they do? Well, they could do nothing. A few months ago, my law firm, I wanted to reach out and to redesign my website. And so I did some research, and I found one of the best web designers in San Francisco. And when I reached out and I made an appointment, I was warned that there was an 8-month waiting list for new clients. 8 months I would have to wait to even start my project. I thought this was absolutely absurd. And so I went and found the next person on my list. But keep in mind what happened here. This particular web designer filtered me out because I wasn't willing to wait 8 months. Now maybe that's exactly what this web designer wanted to do, to filter out people that can't wait 8 months. But my guess is that's not exactly what this web designer wanted to do, because this particular web designer prided himself on being able to work with the cutting-edge technology. Working with cutting-edge technology and yet working with clients that are willing to wait 8 months probably doesn't align. What else can professionals do? Well, if you study Econ 101, you could just raise your prices. I have an old back injury, and it was from a baseball game a long time ago when I was a kid. And when I moved my office from one area of San Francisco to another, I did some research, and I asked some friends and friends of friends to be able to find a masseuse that was in the area. I got really lucky. There's one particular person who had just graduated, and she was just starting her practice, and she was great. And my back remained healthy under her care. She had a great deep tissue technique, and everything was great. Her technique was awesome, and her style was great, and she eventually started to experience this growth in the demand for her service. And eventually, this growth in the demand reached a tipping point. Her appointment book was not only full, but there was now a waiting list. And she looked at this and she said, "What can I do about it?" So she raised her prices. And I understood that. She had school debt, she had San Francisco rent, she had been working hard for years, and now it was time to be able to reap some of those benefits. And so when she raised her prices, I was willing to pay for them. But not all of her clientele were. Some of her friends, mostly creative types, thought she was being greedy and stopped booking appointments. But her appointment book was full because she had reached this tipping point in the demand for her services. But something happened. Over time, her clientele changed. At first, she was working with creative types that brought her a lot of joy. And eventually, she was working with a bunch of financial types that didn't bring her joy. What she had done was filter out 90% of the people that came to her. She didn't realize it. But the filter that she was using was, can you afford my prices? And that misalignment, the misalignment with what she was doing and who she was doing it with, created a rift. This prevented her from enjoying her work. I stumbled upon this other concept a few years ago. And there's a third option here, and that's to be very selective with your clients. My wife and I have a child, and when my wife was in her second trimester, we were searching for the best pediatrician, as new parents often do. And when we looked around, we were asking friends and family and new parent blogs, and we found the best pediatrician within a 2-mile radius of where our home was. And we went to that particular doctor, which was awesome, and we were told that there was a good chance that we were not going to be selected as a new patient. And the reason was because this particular doctor was incredibly successful, and they had probably 10x, 100x amount of people that wanted to come in, and his particular practice couldn't support all of that. We didn't understand at the time, but there was actually an interview process. And had we known about the interview process, we would have studied, just like new parents do, trying to get their kid into a new private school. We would have said all the right answers to be able to get our kid into this program, into this particular pediatrician. But we didn't know about the interview. The interview occurred one day after our son was born. The doctor showed up at the hospital in a very casual visit. "Hey, how are you doing? How'd everything go?" Was asking questions about our parents, asking questions about how we were raised, asking questions about how we were going to raise our child. And we answered raw and honestly. I was holding a baby on my chest. I wasn't going to give the answer that the doctor wanted to hear, what I thought the doctor wanted to hear. I just gave honest answers. It turns out that my particular answer, which was a unique quirky little blend of Eastern and Western medicine, was exactly what the doctor wanted to hear, because that was his particular belief. And we were incredibly well aligned, and we were selected as a new patient. Fast forward 5 years, we're incredibly happy with this particular doctor, absolutely thrilled. And it's quite clear that this particular doctor enjoys his work so much, and his clients so much, and is so invested in this particular clientele. Do you see what happens when professionals, instead of trying to ramp up their particular practice, instead of creating a wait list, instead of increasing their prices, take a tipping point type of an event and turn around and use that to be very selective with their clients? I resonated incredibly well with this particular pediatrician because I too am very selective with my clients. And I'm going to show you how I do it. The first step is to know yourself, to know your calling. As I mentioned, professionals spend a lot of time in school and a lot of time in an apprenticeship, and they do that because of a calling. There's a particular type of work that they want to work on, and there's a particular type of person they want to work with. I remember the exact moment when I was at a big law firm. I went to law school for 3 years, and I was working at this firm for 6, and I was about to flush it all down the toilet. I felt my soul was being drained. But the misalignment wasn't with me and my profession. The misalignment was with me and my clients. At the time, I was working at a very prestigious firm, and we had very prestigious clients. But these big Fortune 500 companies were filing patents for the wrong reason, and that ate at me. I had an epiphany that particular day, and that was, what if I started my own firm? What if I worked with startups? They were raising venture capital, they were creating new jobs, and they were ultimately going to create products and services that had a huge, awesome, positive impact on the world. So that's what I did, and that's my particular calling. Now, the very first client that walked through my door came to me with a copyright issue. And as a patent attorney, I'm also educated in copyright laws. And this was hard. This was the very first opportunity to make money. And I said no. I said, while you do have a problem here, and while I could help you, this isn't my interest. This isn't my calling. And we're not going to be well aligned. Here's one of my competitors. I recommend that you go see her. She's great at what she does, and she could help you. Fast forward 10 years, my law firm reaches some kind of a tipping point in the demand for our services. And for the last 2 or 3 years, what I've done is I've implemented a process. And the process is relatively simple. I ask 2 questions. One is this particular technology, is this particular problem, is this something that I want to work with? Is this something that's going to give me joy? And the second, is this a startup that's going to successfully raise money, successfully hire people, and successfully build a product and service that's going to make a dent in the universe? In short, I ask, will this bring me joy, and would I invest? Now, the third step is probably the hardest, and this is to say no. I say no to 90% of the prospective clients that walk through my door. But this is no different than the 90% of people who filter themselves out by the web designer with his 8-month waiting list. And it's no different than the 90% of folks that are filtered out by the masseuse that has rates that are too high. The difference is that I take a very proactive role in being able to select my clients. I often have to say no to their face. And this is hard. And over time, I realized that one of the ways to deal with this is to make sure that I feel that it's not personal. I believe that all people are created equal, but all clients are not. Clients come to you with a particular problem, and professionals are there to solve problems. And there's particular problems that they like to work on. And there's particular clients that are going to be aligned with the solutions that they're providing. There's going to be clients that are going to listen to advice and implement particular instructions. And so this combination of the particular project and the particular client creates an alignment that's going to hark back to the calling of the professional. Now, there's some that actually really, truly get this. I have a friend who's a founder of Menlo Innovations, which is a software company in Ann Arbor. In that particular company, they take on clients in a very unique way. They figure out who's going to work with that particular client, and then there's an interview, and that little team actually votes on whether or not to take them on. it shouldn't be surprising that this particular founder literally wrote the book on joy in the workplace. The second example that I'll use is a design firm called IDEO. It's one of the best design firms in the world, and I'm sure you've used their products. They call their clients collaborators, and they call their work projects. And these words kind of invoke this kindergarten childlike joy. And if you've ever had the pleasure of working with them or even stepping into their office, you'll know the amount of joy that's actually there. So interesting. So we know that professional services can experience this tipping point, this exponential growth of the demand for their services. And we understand that how they shouldn't scale and how they shouldn't increase prices, but how they should select their particular clients. But not everyone here is a nurse or a doctor or a therapist or an engineer or a designer or consultant or a lawyer. So why do the rest of us care? We should care because I guarantee that all of us are going to be interfacing, going to be working with professionals many, many times in our lives. And when we do, we're going to be thinking about working with the best, often folks that have already reached this tipping point, because that's, of course, what we want. That's what we deserve. But I want to make sure that you understand that there's two types of folks that have reached the tipping point. The folks that have figured this out, how to select clients, and folks that have not figured this out. And you want to work with the folks that have. Because the people who have figured this out are going to be well aligned with their projects and with their clients. And that alignment is going to hark back to their calling. That calling is going to bring them joy, and it's going to inspire them to do amazing high-quality work. The same high-quality work that brought them to the tipping point in the first place. Thank you.